What is going on, everybody? My name is Mr. Sneezy, and for those of you that don't know me, I am a newcomer here to the Total War Warhammer community, but I have been ranked as high as the top 1500 on the leaderboards in Quick Battle. Now today, I want to talk about the Dwarves. The Dwarves were a race that many people saw as underpowered, to say the least. Although some people would call them even unplayable in Total War Warhammer 1. But with the Mortal Empires patch, they've received a lot of good buffs, and I want to talk about some of those buffs, talk about some army comps, and some strategies you can use to be successful with the Dwarves. What I have here is a basic build. This is just my general baseline build, and then from here I would customize into whatever I was playing against. You can see I've taken Belagar Ironhammer. This is a pretty cheap lord. Pretty good, good solid legendary lord for your army. A little bit better than the lord or the rune lord, in my opinion. And still cheap enough to where you can kind of go wide. Also, Mortal Empires saw the Thane is now allowed to use the Tormentor Sword, which is a campaign item that actually gives the dwarves an answer to chariots and cav, things like that. Just stuff that the dwarves just could not handle in the last game. Also, I have 2 units of miners with blasting charges, and these are good for causing disruption to the first charge, that first engagement, kind of negate a little bit of the charge bonus and displace enemy units a bit. They're not super damaging, but they can be placed in Vanguard, which is good to tie up enemy units and give your artillery a extended period of time to fire. For my front line, I just have basic Dwarf warriors. As you can see here, pretty high armor and charge defense against large on a basic frontline unit is pretty powerful, honestly. These are what make the dwarves good against factions like the Beastmen. Things that are just going to try and charge in. Slayers, of course, with their anti-large, one of the few options dwarves have for anti-large, and they're decently quick on their feet with 40 speed, but no, you're not going to catch anything that's mounted and running from you. You have to kind of create a trap and then spring the trap with the Slayers and the Thane and Tormentor Sword, and if you manage to get that off, it's actually quite powerful. Next, for some elite infantry, I have 2 units of hammerers, and a unit of iron breakers. These units are good, the iron breakers, for breaking up enemy lines, kind of like the miners with blasting charges, but they'll also stick in melee forever. 125 armor is just massive. 68 melee defense. These guys will tank all day. Rangers make up the ranged component of my army, along with a unit of Iron Drakes and Trollhammer torpedoes. These actually got buffed in Mortal Empires, so while their damage got nerfed a little bit, their entity size got larger, so there's more models per unit, and it actually ends up being a damage increase, if you look at it that way. And lastly, just a little bit of artillery to force the enemy to engage on us. Nothing too expensive, nothing too specialized, just a standard grudge thrower. Altogether, this is a comp you would want to take against an army you expect to have mainly infantry, mainly mid-grade infantry, with some kind of cav component that you can shut down with the Slayers and the Thane. The Iron Breakers are good for just tanking, keeping that front line together. And I would use this against Greenskins. I would use this against Beastmen. I would use something like this against Skaven, perhaps. Maybe I would change a few things depending on what I thought they would bring. But for some other factions, we'll have to build some other comps. dealing with Lizardmen can be kind of a tricky prospect when playing as the Dwarves, because there are two builds that are floating around, right? There's the super wide infantry Saurus Warrior focused build, and then there's more like a goon squad with Krotgar and a Skink Chief and Saurus Old Blood and large monsters that just try and kind of rip through your front line and get to high priority targets. This build is kind of decent against both of those. We take Longbeards here instead of Dwarf Warriors because they are immune to psychology, which means that the fear and terror caused by Grimlock and all the large entity Lizardmen is going to be for naught. We take a Bolt Thrower here because it's really good at sniping those monsters and even Croxagores and things like that. We also have the Organ Gun in case of that super wide infantry build. The Miners with Blasting Charges show up again to help against the super wide infantry build, and we opt to take Thunderers here instead of Rangers, just for that higher damage and just generally a more impactful unit. And here we want the range. Just try and create distance between some of our troops and some of their larger entities, if that makes sense. Hammerers come back because they're just generally a well-balanced and powerful unit for infantry trading, and they've also received a slight buff with a gold cost decrease in Mortal Empires. The Slayer's got a decrease too, but it's not super important. We do take a unit of Slayers for those large entities, and you want to try and group them with the Thane and have them kind of run around as like almost like a monster hunting squad. Try and take out and lock down some of those high priority targets. Alright guys, here we have a little sped up replay of our anti-Lizardmen comp in action. You can see the Thane and the Slayers out on the right flank going to tie up those Croxagores and Feral Bastillodon. See, we've already pushed back to the enemy's missile units. Our infantry is just superior here. They kind of went halfway between the Monsters build and the Saurus Warriors build, which made things just much easier for us. Iron Drake's firing volleys in. Krotgar is shaken, routed. Just the armor-piercing Thunderers, the Organ Gun, the Bolt Thrower, all of that ranged firepower really helps against the Lizardmen. You just saw the Skink Chief die there. And this battle's pretty much already won. Not much going on. Hammers, hammering away. Krotgar is one of the strongest duelists in the game, but when he's just outmatched and outnumbered like this, not even he can stand. Real simple, guys. Lastly, I want to look at the most difficult matchup for the Dwarves, and that is the Dark Elves and their high-quality infantry. These Harganeth Executioners are just so powerful in cutting down Dwarves. Armored, armor-piercing, anti-infantry, and the Murderous Mastery really helps them too. They've got 84 leadership, which is quite strong. I mean, that's with a couple chevrons, but still. I mean, this is an affordable build that Dark Elf players will likely take against you, or something pretty similar to this. In order to counteract some of this, we take Thorgrim Grudgebear to get a bit more mass to throw around in those infantry engagements. We take a Runesmith with the Rune of Wrath and Ruin for that 48% speed debuff, which is quite nice. Again, a Thane with Tormentor Sword and Slayers, just to try and engage large entities and tie them down. And here we'll take a ton of armor piercing. 2 units of Longbeards with great weapons, a unit of Hammerers, the Peak Gate Guard, 2 units of Thunderers, and an Organ Gun. Just as much armor piercing as you can cram into the army. You could also take just a regular unit of Hammerers and some Miners with Blasting Charges, just to try and extend that initial rush even further. Give the Organ Gun more time to fire, but that's really up to you. A build like this, as far as I've seen, is really your only chance against some of these high-quality infantry and high-quality chariot builds that the Elves can throw at you. It really is a skill-intensive matchup, and you even may have to get a little bit lucky. but that's what we have for you. Alright guys, here we have just a little sped up version of the Dark Elf matchup here. Gonna take our armor piercing and focus down one unit at a time. See, those executioners are already routing. Malekith dives in, we send the Thane and the Slayers to tie him up, keep him where he's at. And the Peak Gate Guard, this is just a lot of damage, just gonna take him down. We're returning our Peak Gate to this main infantry blob here. And this is what I mean when I say you have to get a little bit lucky. He dove in with Malekith, gave us a free kill on Malekith, kind of blobbed up his units, took some archers. You know, this wasn't exactly a perfect build for him. Killed Malekith relatively easily, and that's pretty much how you have to win it. Killing Malekith is a priority. Obviously, don't completely abandon your frontline engagement, because they're going to need all the support they can get. But killing Malekith is really something that makes this matchup possible. He also didn't have any chariots or cav, which just would have made this much harder than bringing 1800 gold worth of shades. But that's it. Well, thanks for watching, guys. This has been my army build video on the Dwarfs. If you guys have any builds that you use offline, anything that works particularly well, any better way to counter those pesky Hargoneth executioners, go ahead and put it down in the comments. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to be doing more army quick battles. We upload every Monday. We're going to be doing more of these army build guides, all kinds of fun stuff. So remember to check back here. This has been Mr. Sneezy, signing